Okay, well, I think we can begin now. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Millie's Guide to Performing Arts. So, whether you're watching live or watching the recording on YouTube, thank you so much for taking some time to watch what I know will be a very insightful and hopefully interesting panel. My name is Hiba, and I'm very excited to be your moderator for today. So, for those of you joining a Millie panel for the first time, Millie is a company dedicated to building a community for international school students globally. As an international student myself, I know that sometimes you may struggle in getting the help you want when it comes to career guidance, major selections, and university choices. So Millie is here to help you figure all of that out. For this reason, Millie hosts webinars and panels such as this one on a weekly basis. For instance, earlier today, we hosted a webinar on Millie's Guide to UI, UX, and Design. So you can learn about all of our past and our upcoming events on our website, www.milliegroup.com. And for more info, you can and our events, you can check out our Instagram at Millie_group. Last but not least, I have some very important and exciting news, which is that Millie's Global Summer Internship Program is now open for applications. So if you're looking for a very meaningful, remote, 100% virtual internship with a genuinely amazing company, I highly encourage you to apply. So the deadline for applications is end of March, and you can find more info on how to apply on our website and socials. So let's get started with Millie's Guide to Performing Arts. How this is going to work is I'm going to first ask the panelists some pre-prepared questions, but for all the audience members, please feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A chat at any time throughout the panel, and I'll make sure to bring them up for the panelists in the last 10 to 15 minutes. So I encourage you to ask questions, whether they're for a specific panelist or for everyone. I'm sure they'll all be very willing to help answer any questions that you may have. Okay, so today we have four amazing panelists who are all either currently studying or have graduated from a variety of performing arts majors. So firstly, I'd like if you could introduce yourselves. So can you tell us your name, the school or university you went to, the city that you are currently in, and one fun fact about yourself? So Helen, if you can begin. Thanks.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Helen. I use she, her pronouns. I currently live in Boston, Massachusetts. I went to Oberlin Conservatory and studied horn performance. I graduated in 2018. And fun fact about me, I play the Alpine horn, which if you know the like Rico Law commercials, the like really long horn, that's my jam.
Hi, my name is Matthew Rimberg. I'm currently in New York City. I went to the Berklee College of Music and I studied jazz composition. I graduated in 2018. A fun fact about myself is that I play saxophone, but I'm actually a terrible performer, to be honest, relative to a lot of my peers who studied at Berklee. It was just never my focus.
Hello, I'm Giovanna. I'm in DC currently. I studied at NYU and I'm now at Yale. And a fun fact about me, I've lived in 5 different countries.
Hi, everyone. My name's Corey. I use he, him, his. I studied psychology and viola performance at the Oberlin College and Conservatory, and I finished my master's at the Paris Conservatory. And a fun fact about me is that I started picking up the mandolin during the confinement. So we'll see where that goes.
Thank you. Wow, very music-related fun facts. I love it. So going on to a bit of pre-university like background. So for Helen, Matthew, and Corey, did you always want to major in like the music side of things? And for Giovanna, did you always want to go into drama? Why is that? And when did you kind of decide?
Yeah, I always like loved and excelled in music, but I don't think I really knew that I wanted to pursue it like more seriously until high school. And then probably around 10th grade, I zeroed in on wanting a conservatory experience.
I think I always wanted to study music. I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do for a career, but it was something I always wanted to explore more. Both my parents are from professional backgrounds. I have virtually no family involved in music or the arts. So it was very difficult for me. I was always pretty discouraged from going into music. And I actually, after high school, I went to Emory University for 1 year. I didn't start in music school, and then I transferred to Berkeley. And like I said earlier, I wasn't much of a performer, which also made it very difficult. But I guess I'm a testament to, like, you can go into the arts, you can go into music. There are a lot of roles that are not just performance.
I started doing plays in middle school and I was like, oh, I really like this. And then I kind of set my mind on that. And then when I got to undergrad, I was like, I kind of want to consider other things as well. So I really took undergrad to work on theater, but also explore those other interests. But it started from a young age where I was really just intrigued by, what is this theater thing? Can I do it for a living?
And for me in high school, I also don't come from a musical or artistic family. So I had supportive but hesitant parents. And I also was someone that needs balance. So I go very fully into my practice and performance, but I need some balance on another side so that I can come back to my craft with more energy and more concentration. So I went into Oberlin with psychology and music because I also knew being a musician is super multidisciplinary, and I knew I wanted to teach a lot. I really enjoyed teaching. So for me, that starts with the human brain and psychology. So I decided to go both with that. And then after that, I decided I wanted to focus completely on the performance side, but allow that sort of psychology to continue to be integrated in my pedagogy and also how I practice and prepare myself as a musician and use those tools as well.
Okay, great. I also want to ask a bit about the process of getting into university or into a music school. Like, was there some kind of portfolio you had to prepare? I know it depends, like it varies a lot depending on the performing art type or the instrument, but is there something like an interview or portfolio kind of thing that you had to do? And if yes, like what kind was it? How did you prepare it?
Yeah, so that would largely differ school to school, instrument to instrument, conservatory versus college. I think there's a lot of variables in there, but generally speaking, there's an audition process, which may or may not include a pre-screening step. And what that audition looks like is, also really variable. But schools will publish their audition requirements and kind of general material guidelines for what you want to play. And I don't know about other instruments, but for me, there was like a lot of decision making that I could choose what pieces that I wanted to play as long as certain elements were represented. So I guess my tip would be to like play appropriate rep for where you are. And then the other thing that's pretty ubiquitous, I think, for like orchestral performance programs are excerpts. So Corey will probably also speak to that a little bit, but making sure that you're covering the basic excerpts and you know them in context, I think is really important.
The process for getting into Berkeley is very different than a lot of other conservatories. It's not very formal, to put it in one word. As a writing major, I had to, there was like a writing portfolio. I think I submitted 3 or 4 pieces that I had written at that time. Specifically with regards to that, my advice would be definitely meet with, if you have a private teacher specifically in composition, that's great. And if you don't, before you submit your portfolio, I would definitely have somebody who has a lot of experience writing music, at least look it over. A lot of people in high school, you don't really get composition experience from your classes in high school so what you end up writing is, I'm sure it's extremely creative and great, but there's some formality things that might enhance your chances. Also, to go with that, everybody at Berkeley does a performance audition, whether you want to perform or not. And you can really come in with whatever you want. There's really no They just say, play us a piece that you want to play. So definitely play something that highlights what you're good at with whatever you're performing. It's not so important to say, oh, I think they want to hear jazz, or I think they want to hear a classical piece. It's better to perform something that's really going to show what you can do.
NYU is like a half conservatory, half academic or liberal arts process. So I had to prepare contrasting monologues, one dramatic, one comedic, and present that. And then there was an interview process. Choosing the monologues, I got help from an outside organization because my high school wasn't really geared in that way to help me. But it was my college audition. I would meet with the professors and they would help me work through the monologues, really learn the shifts and the beats, and coach me through them. And then I presented that at the audition. And then fast forward to grad school, it was also monologues and then 16 bars of song, which I did not know about. And it's really just, I was really scared because I don't consider myself a singer, but it's bring yourself, right? And I brought what I had and I sang, and there's that kind of transparency that I think they also look for, where it's like, this is where I'm at right now. I want to improve, but this is my voice. This is the monologues I'm presenting. Yeah.
And for me, since I went in double degree, I had to do two separate applications, one for the college and the university academic side, and then for the music side of things. So it's two separate processes. And that obviously changes school to school on how if they accommodate that and how their process works. For the music side, there's often a pre-screening. So it's really taking that very seriously because consider it a first round. Unlike wind instruments, we don't do as much orchestral excerpts in the auditions. I think that might be changing, but it's a lot of solo repertoire. So it's choosing the right repertoire for you and making sure that it is good for an audition repertoire and can be put together with a pianist that you don't know really quickly, sort of a thing. So Helen covered very well the process at Oberlin. For me, there was no pre-screening there, but I show up, you do your audition, go in, go out, not really interview. There's some talking sort of a thing, but it's done in front of the teachers. My experience at the Paris Conservatory is vastly different. It's completely old school. Actually, my first year was the first time they did it online. Before, you had to request paper and fill it all by hand and get a seal, and it's so wild. And that is a multiple round sort of thing. So you arrive, you do a full recital, 30, 45-minute recital open so people can come see. And as well, it's in front of a jury not affiliated with the school, and you pass rounds, there's interview. They've changed it so that for me, that it had to be done in French. A lot of schools require it or can accommodate English, but at Saint SM, it's very strict about coming in. I spoke some French, but I learned a lot. I did my best in the interview. And then you have to get a lot of language certificates. It changes everything for school. But then the thing that surprised me is that after your audition, you line up with all the applicants in front of the whole school, everybody, and they call you forward out of the applicants, and you get put on the board with all of the competitors, your scores and your comments right in front of all your peers, and you compete every semester against them to try and get better marks. It's a very, very intense process that I've never experienced in any American school, but it's how things work here in France.
Wow. So what I understand is that it varies massively school to school. Like it's different based on where you go, especially country-wise, like Europe and US differ a lot. So I want to actually get into more of the university side as well, specifically more about like a music school or a music conservatory versus a university. For example, like Helen, Corey, and Matthew, for undergrad, you went to like a music school or a conservatory, whereas Giovanna, you went to NYU, and now you're going to Yale, which are both universities. So what are the differences in like the way these two teach, and what was your decision process like? Like, why did you choose one over the other?
I'll start off by saying you can get an incredible music education at a lot of different schools, whether it's a conservatory, a college, a university, state school. It's all about the teachers and the program itself. For me, why I chose to go to a conservatory is because I wanted, a really rigorous academic course load within musical academia. So focusing on music theory and music history, which is, I think, a big differentiator between like music conservatories and music colleges and then bigger universities, is the prerequisites or like course requirements outside of music. So yeah, that was I guess like my priority.
As I said before, I actually started at Emory, which is a private university, I was doing a dual major in music and Middle Eastern and African studies. And at that point, I didn't really know. I kind of had a loose idea of what I wanted to do, but I was a freshman in college, but at a certain point, I just really wasn't happy with the music program at Emory. It's a fine program. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's just hard for me to imagine anybody going into the music industry following a music education at Emory. And I just wasn't getting what I wanted. I had heard about Berklee. I had former music teachers who had gone there, and I just said, I really want to go for this. I just want to see where it takes me. And like, I loved my experience at Berklee. It was so unique, and you're surrounded by everybody's doing their own kind of thing, but everybody has a similar kind of purpose. You're all trying to get into music, and more people than not at Berklee are trying to get into some form of popular music rather than classical music. And kind of to speak on what Helen was saying, the classes you take there are just completely different. The core music curriculum involves harmony, ear training, arranging, a lot of things like that. Things that those classes aren't even offered at a private university. So you're really just fully immersing yourself if you go to a music college or conservatory.
As I said before, when I went into college, I was intrigued by the idea of theater, but I was still also curious about what else there was. And NYU provided that conservatory liberal arts experience where 3 of the 5 days of the week I had studio training, where I was there 9 to 5:30, and the 2 other days were my academic classes. And I also had the opportunity in some semesters to study abroad or just do a full academic semester with no studio work. And in hindsight, like I really needed that, because at the end of NYU, I was like, oh man, like I really want to do theater now, but school's over. So what do I do? And then I was like, oh, I can go get my master's. And Yale is a university, but the master's program is very much so a conservatory. Like we have chances for electives, but the bulk, 5 days a week from 9 to 3, and then rehearsals from 4 to whatever other time, it's all theater work, voice, movement, scene study, everything. And it's all theater oriented. So it is a university, but I'm getting a conservatory training.
For me, on the music side of things, I wasn't so concerned about school of music, conservatory, or department within a school. My basic thing on the music side was looking for where the alumni are, who's getting jobs, who's surviving in the sort of field, and what teachers are putting out people with careers that I want, sort of thing. So finding first who can help facilitate that and guide me along that path. But specific to me, I was looking for a double degree program from the get-go. So I was looking for schools that had a very had a good awareness of how the conservatory and the sort of academic side work, and were very easy to work within that system, and we're accommodating. Whereas there's a lot of schools that say that you can do it, but they're at each other's throats for your time, for your credits, and sometimes paying more or stuff like that. And even with transport between campuses, so going to the conservatory, but then actually it takes 30 minutes to go to the academic campus, and then going back and forth, that's 1 hour of practice time or study time lost. Of course, you can be in the bus, but really you'd be just chilling or trying not to get car sick. But for me, I knew I really wanted to find a really well integrated double degree program that Oberlin really provided. And I knew from my master's after that, I wanted to go completely into performance. And I was looking at locations where my connections are, sort of a thing where are people getting jobs, where are the arts doing well, thriving, and stuff like that. And I looked quite abroad, and that's a whole different process. But I knew I started with the teacher and the alumni, and then financially, like, of course, which is, again, on everyone's head, where can I afford while getting the most for what my investment is?
Yeah, I think those are really great points, especially like Corey, what you mentioned about looking at what schools produce students with like good careers or careers you want. I think that's a very valid point, and something that's on students' minds a lot, like after university, what's going to happen. So that's a really good point that you mentioned. So getting more into your actual life at university. So I wanted to ask, what was your favorite thing about your degree? So was it a class or something specific, or I don't know, a teacher, what was your favorite favorite thing about your degree?
Yeah, I think my favorite, a lot of favorites, but one of my favorite things was being able to really dive deep into music theory. That was something that I am really passionate about. So that was really, really fun for me. But then also kind of similar to what Corey was saying, Oberlin was so integrated with the college that it allowed me to pursue interests and hobbies and passions outside of music in tandem with my conservatory education, which I really valued. So I could do business and entrepreneurship and be on a sports team and do a lot of things that were pretty unique to that college experience.
My favorite thing about Berkeley was that, first of all, that it's just extremely cooperative between the students. Sure, there's some fun competitive nature to some things, but overall, it's extremely cooperative, and the culture is really just pushing. If you have an idea, if you want to try something, anything in a number of different, just go for it. And like the other students are going to support you. It can get kind of hectic because a lot of students are working on 6, 7, 8, 10 projects at a time. I'm not exaggerating. Just, I led a band during college. I would ask my friends, hey, can you be in my band? And people would say, I'm already in like 12 different bands. And things like part of my degree at the end is I had to put together a portfolio of all the pieces I had written and worked on during my time throughout Berkeley. And I had to get recordings. So we went into the Berkeley recording studios. I had to book time. I had to find my own engineer. I had to find somebody who could edit, like the whole process of making a real record. So there's just this culture of really doing whatever you want to do and following your dreams, I guess.
I loved the theater training. I loved the academic training. I think academic studies. I think my favorite part was being able to study abroad. Like, I'm a huge proponent of acting training being human training, right? So the more I know as a human being, the more I can provide to whatever work I do in the future. So I studied abroad in Madrid, and that semester blew my mind open. Like, I was traveling a lot. I was getting to meet new cultures. And then when you come back to text of like French influence, British influence, whatever it is, you can more keenly relate to them, right? Because you've been there. It was great. It was like a complete mix of getting to travel and experience the world, and then also bring that back and apply that to my theater training.
For my undergrad at Oberlin, it's funny saying it now because it was my least favorite part. Was I liked how isolated Oberlin was because I was able to spend time working on my craft, do things and absolutely fail at them, and just experiment and really try and learn more from it in a very safe environment. I'm such a city person, so I never thought I would be out in the country sort of a thing working on music. But I realized I was so lucky because leaving high school, we were all hot shots at high school sort of thing. But in the real world, we have no idea what we're doing. So it was good to focus for my time there and just get better at my craft so that now when I'm in a city and whatnot, I'm ready to show what I can do instead of have to backtrack and don't even think about making good impression for managers as a freshman or sophomore in undergrad. It's extremely rare and it never happens, and no one looks at you then in that sort of ready for stage sort of thing. So it's about finding a place where you can really pursue your craft. And then for me at the Conservatoire, I think what I really like about it was that they don't treat you like a student. You show up, you're treated like a professional in the field. They're asking where your concerts are, why aren't you out there performing? And there's so much pressure put on you to act like a professional. Like you can enter as young as possible. I know 13, 12-year-olds and graduating at 17 with their masters, and they're extremely mature. They've been living on stage the entire time at the school. And maybe it's just a Parisian element to it, but everyone's just acting like professionals. And I don't say my friends, that's what I say my colleagues at school, and everyone dresses up for school out of respect for one another and everything. And it's a very different way of treating music and really giving it respect that I really appreciated.
Wow, that's so interesting. I want to get a bit more into kind of getting experience while at college or at university. So did you have any kind of internship or work experience or kind of teaching experience during or before college? And how was that? Like, did you get it through school or individually? And did that help you in any way?
So like work experience, I had jobs in high school, not related to music, and same thing in college. I worked in the dorms kind of for 3 out of my 4 years. And then I also tutored in music theory in school, and that was really great. And then internships for me were where I could explore passions outside of music. And so that's for me where I did internships in business and finance and entrepreneurship that allowed me to kind of step away from my music education and explore other things that were interesting to me and see what I liked and try to envision what my future could look like in or outside of music. Yeah.
So I'll first say that, like Helen, I was also a tutor for music theory and ear training and some arranging and some things like that. This is going to kind of lead me down a slightly different path, but so I was studying jazz composition at Berklee, and I took some electives about the music business. I didn't really give it too much thought at the time, but I really actually fell in love with the music business. And after school, I went into the music business, and now I'm actually in law school studying for entertainment law. So I'm really not a professional composer or performer at all anymore. So going back to the question, in my second or third year, we were in one of my music business electives, we were talking about all the team members of an artist's team. This is pretty early on, and we're talking about what an artist manager does and what an artist manager is. And I'm like, hey, that sounds really interesting. So I had a friend at the time who was, he's still today, he's a young hip hop artist, and that's all he wants from his life is to be a successful hip hop artist. And I was like 19 or 20 at the time. And I said, hey, I really think I can do this. And it's like, let me manage you and let's just see where it goes. And 3 years later, we're still going. And it's one of the greatest experiences of my life. It's just, a lot of times when you're younger, yes, like go for the internships, go for the competitions, all those things. But a lot of times people they're just not going to give you the opportunities you want. There's always other candidates. Don't let that stop you. Just go for it. Just do something, be entrepreneurial. There's nothing that you can't do. Just put your heads together and figure it out.
Absolutely. I fully agree with that. I mean, before college, it wasn't internships, it was extracurriculars. So theater, I would be doing the shows in school, but then in college, I went down this route of like, I want to figure out what I want and what I don't want. So then I started applying to internships in like talent agencies, documentaries, different fields of performing arts and entertainment to feel it out and be like, is this the path I want, you know? And after those, then there were also student films where that would give me the chance to perform or film or act. And those are everywhere. You just have to look for them. I know NYU has a Tisch Talent Guild where postings are there all the time. Even online, backstage, students post all the time. So it's really just a matter of, it has to stem from you, right? It's not just going to fall in your lap. Like you have to go after it. But if that drive is there, you can find opportunities literally anywhere.
I completely agree. For me, and I was really inspired by a lot of my friends and their sort of drive to stay within the field sort of thing that they said there's some people that they say they want to stay within the music field, so they're not going to take jobs unrelated to music, because as soon as they get one step out, it's going to be so much easier to just stay outside of music or lose love or something of that connection. But for me, I taught a lot in high school and I did little counselor things and internships that were super important for me. I would say for classical music is the festival scene, sort of going to many festivals and academies when you're younger to get to know teachers, get on their radar, get to know just sort of other people that can inspire you. That's your own age. Undergrad, I was a tour guide, a writer, blogger, social media thing for the school. I worked at like a music festival. I worked at many music festivals on social media assistance sort of thing, assistant production. I currently teach so much and I love it. A lot of it on Zoom right now, but I teach a lot and I really enjoy teaching. I am very lucky to be performing a lot and with a quartet, and I'm on circuit for orchestral auditions, which is a completely different thing. So I'm going like whenever a job gets posted, going for orchestral auditions. But it's really what you want to curate for yourself. The beautiful thing about being an artist in general is being scrappy and really going for what you want, sort of thing, because no one's ever going to hand you anything. And even at these so supportive schools, this sounds bad and it's not like that. It's that people want you to succeed, but they're not going to help you. It's like you have to go for it. You have to, if you're not getting the role, then you create it, sort of thing. You do it outside it. You make your own productions, because if they're not going to give you the opportunities, you better make them yourself, because no one's going to give them to you, because you just have to go sending out 20 applications and hope to come back with a next round sort of thing, and hopefully you get one. So it's just being scrappy, it's being gritty, it's being in it, and it's being in it to win it. And there's no just going for the experience. If you don't want it, you're never going to get it.
Wow, those are I feel like you guys gave some really good advice, especially because a lot of people are hesitant, like you said, to go for it. But I guess that's what you have to do. You just have to try it, and you'll never know until you try it yourself. So I want to ask a bit about, for those people who are interested in the performing arts, but maybe aren't interested in majoring in it or couldn't major in it for any reason, can they still get into the industry? Can they still how can they get into it, or is it harder? If yes, then yeah, how can they essentially get into the industry without a degree in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe you can kind of do anything if you're willing to put in the work and be, like Corey said, be scrappy and make opportunities for yourself. yeah, I'll maybe let some other people speak to entering the performance field without a degree.
So my answer is absolutely. Speaking particularly towards popular music forms, so this is anything from jazz to rock to pop to hip, anything in the that you would see as a Grammy Award. There are so many opportunities right now. The music industry is just absolutely exploding. You don't need to be a musician to be in the music industry. A lot of people, if you're not part of it, if you're not around it, you don't know that it's even there. Like I said earlier, my parents didn't know. They thought, that if I wanted to go into the music industry, I'd never make anything. I'd be struggling my whole life. It's not true. It's really an exploding industry right now. I worked for a booking agency for 2 years, where I did marketing for them. That company booked tours for a lot of big jazz artists like Pat Metheny, Chick Corea, rest in peace. Like I said, I was also managing an artist at the same time. So I was kind of working 2 jobs at the same time. If you want to break into the music business, my advice would be to just start reading as much music business news as you can. There are a lot of outlets, Music Business Worldwide. There's Jay Gilbert, Your Morning Coffee. There's so many different things. I want to give some other people a chance to talk, but yes, just start reading and getting involved in the music business socially.
I think there definitely is an opportunity. My sister and I went to our local theater when we were little and did like little shows, and then when I was a student in New York, I would go to the local theaters wherever there was auditions, truly, and you can find them online again, because there's constantly gonna be jobs that are open, and when they're looking for it, it's not like, oh, did you get a degree? It's like, oh, do you have the talent? Is this the talent that I want? I will say I have friends at school who are much older than me and who like went into the profession and professional auditions, and they said that they noticed that people with degrees usually either went further in the process or like got their foot in the door earlier because there's a name attached to them, there's a reputation attached to them, and that definitely helps, but that alone is not going to book you a job. You also have to bring yourself to it.
For me, I love the sort of gray area of things where, of course, you don't need to go to the brand schools. You don't have to go to the 1% schools or whatever. But at the end of the day, on the performing side of the thing is you're going to be competing against those people. So there's a difference of choice. You don't have to go to those schools, but you better be ready to compete against them, sort of a thing for an orchestral audition. So it's not like when you graduate high school, so-and-so goes to Curtis, these people go to Berlin, this person goes to whatever school. That's great and whatever. But then when you show up at the audition, you're all on the same level there and you all are going to it. And if you weren't able to get into that, and sometimes you never know, there's millions of factors for these things. But if that person plays better than you, they will get that job. It's if on that performing thing, or who knows, maybe they got nervous and that so-and-so got it. But it's the idea that you don't need to go to those schools, that's for sure, but you need to be prepared to compete against those people, sort of a thing. So if you want to, if you go to Chicago Symphony or Paris Orchestra and stuff like that, you're going to be competing against the people who have been training for that for their whole lives as well. So, and it's also like being in the field, there's many ways to contribute and there's many ways that you can do your own thing. But when you're grant writing, which is an important step, being able to be a good grant writer, to get money to do what you want to do. Because pursuing what you love is fantastic, but at the end of the day, you need to get paid and you need to advocate for yourself to be paid for your work. And you just have to be extremely scrappy. And again, you don't have to, the name helps a lot. I know there's many times where I've just been pushed towards a certain gate just because I went to such school or because I had this connection that I met. Connections are so important. But connections made at the right time. And again, just a great personality, showing up on time, being a great colleague goes far. But at the end of the day, if you're not producing or showing what you can do, then that's at the end of the day what they're looking for is your talent and hard work.
That's great advice. It's good to know that you can still at least enter the industry and still get your foot in, even if you don't go to university for it specifically. But I want to know what was all of you guys' favorite and least favorite thing about the performing arts industry? So not specifically studying, just the industry in general. What's your favorite and least favorite thing?
Yeah, favorite thing, I mean, the collaboration and exhilaration of performing, like that never gets old for me. And the least favorite, for me, the career path of an orchestral performer like didn't line up with what I wanted out of my career, and it didn't line up with what it meant for me to satisfy my own ambitions. But that's really, really different person to person, obviously.
I would say like my favorite thing is like the people, at least in my experience, when you're working in the music industry, like it doesn't matter what part of it you're in or what genre, everyone who's there, or let's say 90% of people there, all really love music. Like if you're working in music professionally, you love music on some level, even if you're not a performer or a writer or whatever, you're just a rabid, something drove you here, and you can connect with people on that level. At the same time, kind of going into the least favorite thing, it's extremely networking heavy. So kind of what Corey was talking about earlier, I don't have that much experience in that world, but it's no different in any part of the industry. You have to know people. You need to go out, put yourself out there, shake a lot of hands, and just try to meet people. A lot of people will be, willing to talk. Ask them about their career, and some people won't be. Don't let that get you down. It's just the way some people are. But yeah, it's very network heavy.
I would say my favorite thing is probably the rehearsal process, where we're like world building and we're finding the characters and talking with each other, the director, the cast members. We're trying to figure it out. We have to collaborate, right, to kind of get on the same terms. My least favorite part, I haven't worked professionally. I've just gone like school to school, right? But so what I can speak to is, and it's something that even I'm still working on growing into, is the uncertainty of it all, right? Like a lot of times I get really overwhelmed with like, oh my gosh, is this going to work out? Should I keep going? But there's that little thing that's like, no, dude, just go. You're going to regret it. You're going to resent yourself if you give up early, So coming to terms with that is a process, and I'm in the beginning of it, but it's also a beautiful thing.
For me, like everyone said, it's the community, the rehearsal process, is being around people. That was important for me, as I knew I didn't want to show up at the same desk for the same hours. I love changes of scenery. I love working amongst passionate people and not people who are who disdain showing up to what they do. So I love being around passionate people. For me, this is an interesting sort of new thing, recent, that I've really come to not really like about the performing arts, is this idea of pursuing what you love and independently, but also this desire for stability, but you have to make sacrifices, whether it be you have to, for me, contemporary music is a huge love of mine, chamber music, but you have to be constantly rehearsing with people, creating your own sort of events or whatever. The income is way more unstable sort of a thing, and sometimes it comes in, sometimes it's based on the seasons. Here in France, we have something called intermittence, which is a little bit different, where we're very lucky that if you have this status, you get a monthly income from the government being an artist, which is something I think would be really cool in the United States. But anyway, but the other thing being like playing an orchestra or being a professor in a school, where you have less sort of say in what you play and what you do, whatever, but you get a stable income which can then provide for your other projects on the side, but you have to make sacrifices in order to do that. So it's being able to balance your own personal things within stability versus giving up your own independent voice often to gain that stability. So it's often juggling, and that's something that's really hard, and not knowing what you want. And that's really hard right now, especially as a graduate.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's good to have a balance, especially like in the performing arts. I imagine, like you said, it's not always stable if you're in that area. So it's good to have a balance. I wanted to circle back a bit to Matthew. You said you worked in the music business side of the industry, and you talked about kind of what led you to this route. So I want to know about what does your like day-to-day look like, and what would you recommend to someone who wants to go a bit more into this side of the business rather than strictly a traditional performing arts route?
Sure. Well, first of all, I apologize, something motor outside, but currently my day-to-day is kind of boring because I'm in law school. But before that, like I was working for a booking agency, and I was doing marketing. I had no formal education in marketing or anything like that, but I knew enough from reading and from looking at what other companies, what other people were doing, that we were losing, my company was losing business. We weren't getting all the potential business we could if we had utilized these tools properly. So I just went to my superior and I said, like, let me try this. Like, I can do this. And I just started from Google, from YouTube, learning how to do all this stuff. I'm still not an expert at all. But so two things I'll say out of that. One is just looking for deficiencies and trying to fill a role that isn't being filled. Because if all you ever want to do is something that somebody is already doing and they're not going away for the next 20, 30, or 40 years, that's going to be very difficult. And it's not impossible, and I'm not telling you to give up on that, but there's also other ways to elevate yourself in this world. And the other thing is that just substantively, marketing is just everything right now. If you want to be in the music industry, it doesn't matter what part of the industry, and marketing is just everything. And understanding that, like, to speak about some specifics, like Instagram is just significantly less important now than TikTok is. It's just the idea of Spotify playlists is not as important as it was last year. It's constantly changing, and trying to stay on top of this stuff. It all goes back to reading the professional articles.
Okay, great. I want to get a bit more into a common misperception or perception, I don't know, I want you guys' opinions on the performing arts, which is that there's no need to really get a degree in a performing arts related subject. So I want to know if this is true or not true, what your opinions are. And specifically when we get to Giovanna and Corey, I want to know how, like, what you would say on this, especially since you guys decided to go further and actually get a master's as well. So yeah.
Yeah. I think, depending on where you're coming from with that statement, I think you could make that case for almost any degree. If you want to say, you don't need to have an econ degree to do X, Y, and Z. You don't need to have a performance degree to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, but like, your degree is not a purely pre-professional asset. So your education is your own. What you're getting out of it is whatever you put into it. Yeah.
So kind of going back to something I spoke about a little earlier, when I was at Emory, I definitely felt like I wasn't getting what I wanted. And I didn't really know, like, I couldn't put my finger on specifically what was missing. I could just feel that it wasn't right. And like when I went to Berkeley, it really had a lot less to do with what I studied, even though I really enjoyed my courses. But just being around those people and seeing what other people are doing, I never would have gotten into the many different things that I did if I wasn't exposed to these different, because you just don't know what you don't know, right? You don't even know the right question to ask. So, you know, I said earlier, you definitely don't need a performing arts degree to be part of the music world. There are so many roles, but just make sure you're part of, you're surrounding yourself with the right community.
I think, of course, anyone can act, anyone can perform. The distinction I make and why I am a proponent of getting a degree is to what extent and how well, because the training really, it's not just width, it's depth, right? So the training takes you into it and you understand not just, oh, I'll learn these lines. It's like motive and objective, super objective. And it's this deeper study. Even we have a drama 6 history course where we learn the origins of theater, of global theater work. So when we're working on a piece, we know where it came from. We know the link, you know? So sure, anyone can act. It's just a matter of how deep do you want to get into the study of it? How do you want to train your body and your mind to really go into it instead of at a superficial level, you know?
Really going off what Giovanna said, I completely agree. For me, like, whenever I was studying with people, the people that didn't go to their history classes, that didn't go to oral skills, or any of those things that seem supplemental to your instrument sort of thing, they seem as just add-ons to things that are just taking away time from practice. But the colleagues that I've worked with that are deeper, more intellectual musicians that have more to bring to the table, that creates for more fascinating art and more fascinating human to human contact and more interesting conversations. Because for someone that can just execute what's on the page is one thing, but someone that understands the context and can understand even talking after the concert sort of thing, it really makes a difference, and it makes for you them wanting to call you back again. Because of course we all need to be technical players. You have to be proficient on your instrument or in your craft, but you have to, but also not avoiding these other things that you think are supplementary. They're really there to make this a deeper connection to why this human-to-human contact sort of is necessary, sort of a thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, there's always something that you can learn when you actually attend the classes, something you may have not known, even if you are naturally good at acting or singing or playing an instrument. I want to get to a question in the chat before I move on, which is that we see in movies that critiquing/training can be very harsh in conservatories. How do you take that kind of feedback?
Yeah, I think it's a skill, like, to be able to frame and reframe and receive critical feedback. And it's a skill that is worth practicing, like starting right now, in all aspects of life, not just performance. Certainly, yeah, I mean, if it's super, super difficult for you to receive critical feedback, going into the performing arts is going to be difficult. So it's worth practicing right now. And it's not something that you either can take it or you can't. Like, it's a skill. You practice it like anything else. And being able to receive critical feedback and then interpret that and take it, run with it, and make yourself a better performer, a better musician, a better artist is super, super important.
I was taking a course at Berkeley called Jazz Composition 2, and I really was struggling in this class. This is obviously one of the core classes of my major, and I really was struggling with understanding what the professor was trying to teach, and specifically how to implement the techniques that we were being taught in our own pieces. And it was very frustrating at the time, and getting the feedback and the poor grades and all of that. It is kind of a skill, like Helen said, to, like, you need to be able to persevere to really read and try to think about objectively what they're trying to tell you, and because they're there to help you ultimately. Hopefully that's the case in most of the situations, but it was true for me. And ultimately, when I took the subsequent class, Jazz Composition 3, I improved significantly.
Yeah, I had one professor in undergrad, we were doing Meisner technique in a scene, and I was really hitting a wall, and he pushed me in a sense of really being like, no, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it, because he knew that I could get there, you know, and he knew that I could find the way through my own work. And I really appreciated that. But something I also really appreciate is students having the autonomy to, and this is something an acting professor of mine now has spoken to us about, where there needs to be an agreement of before class, before the work starts, do you want to be pushed? Is this work that you will feel comfortable being pushed in? Because I think something that the pandemic has really brought up is like mental health and sustainability in the work. And right now we're not in usual circumstances. And after class, I'm going to close the computer and just be in my room. And do I want to be pushed and then be left alone to whatever that brought up, right? So those agreements, and I'm so grateful that we're now getting to a point in the training where it's more human, and establishing those agreements of, do you want to be pushed? How far do you want to be pushed? No, I'm not in a good place today. Okay, so let's work on something else, you know?
I feel in the United States, I was in a great place where I was pushed, but I always felt free to fail, which is really important. When I came to France, everything in the movies came true. Here at the Paris Conservatory, it is a system where they really want you, they cut you out. They really want you, they rate you, you have scores against your colleagues, you are ranked, you are cut, and you're given your comments direct in front of things. You do your exams open, everyone can come here and everything, everyone's judging, managers are there, they're looking. And we even, it's hilarious for me now, like I was able to get through it. We even have juries, which are every year. If you don't pass your juries, you're cut. And it's easy as that. And actually they take your photo and dossier, your like folder, and they put it in the basement, an art exhibition where everyone can go see everyone that failed at the school. And you see your name with your photo there. So everyone that got cut, it's called Les Mondes de CNSM, the ghosts of CNSM, and anyone could go see. And it's a big hallway of folders and photos, and it's unbelievable. And this French system works with, there's only 2 schools where you can get a degree in music in France. Lyon and Paris, you get 2 shots at them. If you don't get into these schools, you have no opportunity to get a music degree in this country. So you have to leave the country or do something on your own. And I've never been in such a rigorous, pressure-oriented environment. But the way I got through it was finding a community and camaraderie, because the students, the people that were competitive and looking at those scores, those were people you didn't want to affiliate yourself with anyway. But when you find yourself, because everyone is going through the same pressure, everyone is in the same pressure cooker. But if you find a group, because everyone feels the same hurt and critiques, and learning to have thick skin, and I've learned to have really thick skin. And everyone has their favorite bathroom to cry in after lessons, sort of a thing, if necessary. But really finding a group where it's not to speak bad of the system, nor to your colleagues, or speak bad of your professors, those who push you, but to build each other up after a failure, after something that didn't go so well. But finding a group of people that can really build you up is so important. Finding mentors who believe in you is far more important than getting like an okay on your recital sort of thing. And I think that's far more valuable, is that system of community. And I think it's the job of us to develop that by our actions, of really reaching out to other people. And it's not the conservatory. Their music school, they're there to just teach you the craft and push you. But we as artists need to help each other out. So I think it starts with us and not looking for that from the system, sort of a thing.
Okay, great. We're almost at the end of our panel now, so I just want to wrap up. If you all could really quickly, in like 20 seconds, give one small like token of advice, something that you wish you would have known when you started on your path, whether that was university or career-wise, something that maybe you would have done differently or tried out more of. So really quickly, if there was one token of advice you'd give yourself when starting out, what would that be?
Yeah, I think for me, looking back on my own experiences, I wish that I had viewed adaptability as a skill earlier. And I wish that I had like really consciously made an effort to develop and foster that skill, because adaptability to me means being able to shift and pivot and, you know, roll with the punches, and then also being able to make your own happiness and find fulfillment and satisfaction from your life in whatever situation you're currently in. And I think, you know, the past year has also taught me that a lot, for everyone, I think. But yeah, being able to, because things change so quickly, especially in the performing arts, because it's, you know, Corey was mentioning, like, it's not always super stable. Yeah, and just being able to pivot and go with it and create your own happiness and be adaptable is so important.
Don't stop. If this is something you really want, it's going to be tough. People are going to try to discourage you. You know, as people have said, post college, there might be times of financial instability, but if you keep pushing, if you keep looking for the opportunities, it will happen for you.
A colleague of mine once said, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So if you have questions, ask them. If you are confused, voice it. Don't let the situation silence you, right? Get clarification, get what you need, because it's your path, and you can't let things get in the way of getting yourself to wherever you want to go. But also enjoy the process, because that is most of it.
I completely and would say the same thing that my colleagues have just said. And I would add to learn to be a good learner, because learning how to practice is something not only in your instrument, but will follow you in every domain of your life. Learn the science of learning, ask other people how they learn, and adapt to your learning. There's no magic bullet, there's no system, but good learning provides good results. So, and asking for help when you need it, just as Giovanna said, and just learning just to enjoy the process and understand it's a process.
Okay, well, amazing. This has been really inspiring, and I think very insightful and helpful for those who are actually thinking about going into the performing arts. So we've come to the end of the panel, so I want to say a massive thank you to everyone for watching, and especially a very big thank you to all our amazing panelists for giving us your invaluable advice. One last time, I'd like to remind everyone the summer internship program at Millie is open, so if you're interested, you can find more info on our website and Instagram. And if you'd like to rewatch this panel or watch any of our previous or upcoming panels, you can find more info on our website and Instagram as well. But thank you so much, everybody. And